Could you just explain, what pre-selling is, how that looks, and why you recommend it for new fashion brands?
Sure. Pre-selling is simply selling your product before you make it. That's the most simple terms. Your customers pre-order before you create the product. And the reason that this is such a smart way to launch, and you can do this after you launch, you can do this for new collections, new products, new colorways,
Mhm.
but specifically for launching is that you're able to test the market, right? You're able to test the market to make sure that you have customers for what you want to create. Because until people are willing to open their wallets and say, yes, I want to order, I want to buy what you're selling, you don't know. You can send out as many surveys and talk to as many customers and do as many Instagram polls as you possibly can, but you really don't know until it's time for your potential customers to open their wallet. And so this not only tests the market, but it also reduces your own financial risk so that you're not using all of your life savings or taking out a loan or whatever it is to produce. It can take $20,000 to just do one initial production run of a few hundred
Mhm.
units. So, making sure that you're protecting yourself, and again, making sure that you have customers to buy before you create anything.
Yeah. So, do you recommend doing that pre-sale before even making contact with the factory, or would the person try to establish that relationship with the factory and then the pre-sale? Because I kind of had assumed that they would contact the factory first, but I'm not so sure
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, definitely you wanna have, again, the relationship building, some conversations going with
Okay.
a few different factories. You need to have pricing, so you'll probably
Right.
have 1 to 3 factories who do a time study so that you can price your product correctly based on your cost of goods sold. But yes, I definitely recommend being in contact with manufacturers before
Okay.
going down the pre-sales, campaign road.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, this pre selling strategy requires building an audience so that the brand has people to sell to. So, what advice do you have for brand owners that, want to build an audience from scratch?
Yeah, this is so, so important. It's arguably more important, if not as important, as your product development and setting up your supply chain because you can have the most beautiful product in the world, but if you don't have an audience of customers to buy it, then it's just a hobby. It's not a business. So building that audience in advance, again, if you're on a bootstrap budget, if most brands, most of us don't have thousands, if not millions of dollars in VC funding or a celebrity endorsement. If you're really doing this yourself from scratch, then you have to build up that audience organically. And it is never too soon to start doing that. It's one of the first things we do in Factory 45 as we start building that audience, building our email list, most importantly, building our social media following, content marketing, getting in front of existing audiences. There are so many different strategies where I often get the pushback, well, how do I build an audience? I don't even have a product to sell yet. I don't even have samples to show. I don't have anything to show for myself. And it doesn't matter. You can create that community in advance and take the audience through that journey with you of creating your brand and creating your product. And that's what is compelling. That's a compelling story that gets people on board and invested in your idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me of another conversation I had with Natalia Gomez, who works in the marketing space. And we were talking about ethical marketing. And part of that was also about building community. It's not just about selling and pushing sales all the time. It's, building an authentic community and sharing your story. And I think that points to that really well. So I love that you talked about that.
Absolutely.
So, another mindful or very intentional approach to production is on demand manufacturing. So, can you tell us what that is and is that different than pre-selling, or is that, related?
So I think of it is pre-selling in some way. It is. I sort of separate
Mhm,
them as your pre-sale campaign is like a bulk launch, like it's pre-selling a bunch of inventory up front. And then once you do that initial launch, you can shift to on-demand manufacturing, or people call it made to order,
mhm,
and that would be more like one-off. So let's say you do a production run of 500 units through your pre-sales campaign. You create that 500 units and then you continue selling one off through the made to order manufacturing model. So people can come to your e-commerce site, your Shopify site, wherever it is, order it, and then there's a lead time maybe of, 2 to 4 weeks, because it is made to order and the factory is just making it as the orders come in.
mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, why do you think that this is a more sustainable approach, environmentally speaking, but also financially speaking?
Yeah, well, you think about the amount of waste that the fashion industry creates. And of course, the bulk of that waste has nothing to do with the small brands or the independent fashion brands. It's fast fashion. That is what is the most problematic area. But I've seen, brands that are more established adopting this pre-selling or on-demand manufacturing strategy. And I think the whole idea is, let's not produce clothing that we don't know will sell, that will end up sitting in a warehouse, or will end up, slashed through and put into garbage bags and discarded into a landfill. So I think that's the environmental side of it, which is pretty straightforward. And then obviously the financial side of it is just cash flow can be an issue for small brands first starting out. And so if you don't have that few, $10,000 up front to invest in more inventory, then you can at least adopt a made to order model so that you don't need that bulk cash up front, that you can really just take it as it comes in and produce it, to go out directly to the customer who just purchased it.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that's a challenge for brands? Like, I feel like consumers or, the general populace has become quite used to 2-day shipping, free shipping, very, very fast deliveries, convenience.
I think that it depends on who your customer is. If you're trying to go after the Walmart, Amazon Prime shopper, and that's the only place they ever shop, then yeah, that's probably not going to be a successful customer brand relationship. But if your customers are made up of people who are already invested in the slow fashion movement, like they only buy sustainable fashion, or they only buy thrifted fashion, or they have this kind of ethos around them that they care about their purchasing power, then I think they're willing to wait. And I see that, all the time with my brands that are launching pre-sales campaigns. They have these very dedicated followings, these communities who will say, yeah, I'll wait a few months to get that product because I believe in the mission. I really want the product. And, I'm here to support a different type of consumer behavior and shopping behavior.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense, finding the right audience and probably also educating people on why made to order is a, more sustainable approach in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think about like my brand, one of the brands that launched through Factory45, Vesta. Anyone who's listening can look it up. It's started by Kendall, and she's actually one of our alumni mentors, and she does made to order only. And she it works for
Yeah.
her. It works for her customer. So that's just like one model to look at as an example.
Yeah.